Once upon a time, in the grand city of Varanasi, there lived King Kausikaraja and his queen, Sanda Devi, for a long time. They had no children, but finally, the queen gave birth to a son, Prince Temia. From the very first month of his life, Prince Temia noticed something extraordinary. One day, while the little prince was resting beside his father, the king gave the order, "Execute the thieves." Upon hearing this, Prince Temia remembered his past life, how he had once ruled Varanasi unjustly and suffered in hell for 80,000 years. Disturbed and worried, a divine maiden came to him and offered wise counsel. Determined never to repeat the mistakes of his past, Prince Temia decided to act weak, mute and deaf, pretending to be helpless. Months passed, and the king's courtiers reported that the prince still did not respond. After consulting the wise men, the king tested Prince Temia in many ways over 17 years. At 1 year old, with milk; at 2 years old, with cakes; at 3 years old, with fruits; at 4 years old, with toys; at 5 years old, with bowls of food; at 6 years old, with fire; at 7 years old, with an elephant; at 8 years old, with a snake; at 9 years old, with dancers; at 10 years old, with swords; at 11 years old, with a conch; at 12 years old, with a large barrel; at 13 years old, with an oil lamp; at 14 years old, vis or censer; at 15 years old, with dung; at 16 years old, with a fire-breathing lamp; at 17 years old, with 17 rounds of dancing. Despite all these tests, Prince Temia never moved or spoke. Finally, the wise men concluded that the prince was unfit to be king and advised that he be carried away in a whole train without charm. At set momentin, reminded king of his past promise, as who promised, "Let our son request his rightful reward." Today, he asks for the throne, although the king initially refused. He eventually allowed Prince Temia to rule for 7 days. During this time, the queen repeatedly pleaded with the prince to speak, yet he remained silent, steadfast and unmoved. After the 7 days ended, a whole train without charm Prince Temia away. He spoke to the charioteer, "I am not a king. I am one who neither hears nor sees, one who bears no suffering for myself, guided by wisdom." He renounced the throne, preached the law of compassion to the charioteer, and entered the life of a monk. In the end, his parents, the kings, the people of Varanasi, and even the neighboring kings of 7 countries all followed his example, leaving worldly life behind to become monks. The story of Prince Temia teaches us that true greatness does not come from power or wealth. It comes from renunciation, compassion, and wisdom, the highest virtues of life. Thank you all for listening and watching.